let people join. In the meantime, the chat function is open. Please let us know where you're from. I will launch a poll just now just to see what your involvement is in terms of both ethics and technology and your relationship and your role with those. So thank you very much for joining us. I really do appreciate it. Hi, let us know where you're from. We've got a couple of people who have joined us so far. I'm going to open the poll now. If you would like to, this is just a getting to know you, who you are, and what role you currently play in terms of, there are two questions. So scroll down and see the second question as well. The first question is all about what role you play in terms of technology. Trinidad and Tobago, Kenya, lovely to see you, Walter, online. Heather, lovely from South Africa, Malaysia, another Trinidad and Tobago, Namibia, lovely to see you all online. Thank you very much. You'll see that the Copenhagen, Glenn, lovely to see you online. You'll see that I've opened up the poll just to get to know who's online. There are two questions. So if you just scroll down using the scroll bar on the left-hand side, please answer both of them. It'd be lovely to hear from you and hear what role you have with and how you're engaging with these topics. For those who don't know about the Good Governance Academy, I'm just going to share my screen and take you through the Good Governance Academy. And today, I want to just go up to the top here. So today we're talking about, it's our Global Ethics and Technology Summit. We try and have these every year. Last year we had clashes with various things, but really it's brought to you, and this year in particular, big thanks to the South African Business Schools Association, to the Global Business School Network, to the AACCA, to the AACSB, and to the Association of African Business Schools. Every year we try and have this, the Global Summit on some topic, and really it's in collaboration with all of the business schools around the world. So big thanks to the business schools for their promotion and being involved and recommending speakers so that we really can get thought leadership in today's summit. Today's summit, I'm opening now. Then I'm going to hand over to Tom, and Tom's going to give us a 40-minute presentation. He is going to leave some time for questions. So if you have any questions for Tom, you can see the chat function is really full already. So put your question into the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, because that allows us to see, to better find the questions amongst the chat. So please use that functionality. After Tom has spoken and answered your questions, we are going to launch breakout rooms. And there are 3 breakout rooms that we're launching today, each 40 minutes discussions. And in the first breakout room, we have a discussion on technology and human rights that's going to be led by Dan with Paul Barrett. Then we have a discussion with leadership, linking ethical use of technology with sustainability. And Lise Lott is facilitating that discussion. The third discussion I'm going to facilitate with Rachel and Alistair from the ACCA. When that meeting room closes, that breakout room closes, we're all going to come back to this plenary meeting, and we're going to just get a little bit of feedback from Dan, Lise Lott, and Rachel about what happened in their panel discussions, because we know that you can't go to all of the panel discussions. They're happening in parallel. So we're just going to have a quick 5-minute break. If you want a body break or a tea break at that point, we're going to have a quick 5-minute break and a recap in terms of what happened in the panel 1 discussions. Then we are going to break out for the panel 2 discussions. If you want to record the panel 2 the panel discussions, please, you're welcome to set the captions on. You're able to record the transcripts. You're able to see the captions, and some of you might be able to record as well. We will be recording this keynote presentation, but we won't be recording the breakout sessions themselves. The panel 2 discussion will go through technology and organizational ethics, and Louise will be facilitating that discussion. The middle discussion is with myself and talking about the ethical use of data in new technologies. And then the final discussion will be facilitated by Cesar on the auditing the ethical use of new technologies. Again, after that panel discussion closes, we'll spend some time just getting some feedback in terms of what was discussed, and then I will close the session. I am hoping that I'll be able to give you 15 to 20 minutes back in your day, depending on how fast or slow we go. But essentially, I'm just going to do a concluding remarks at the end and thank everyone for attending. We do have just over 900 registrations today, so thank you very much to everyone for joining us. And I know that our breakout rooms are going to be very busy. They are in meeting formats to allow more effective participation. So please, in terms of your breakouts, if I can ask you just to be conscious of your video and turning your mic off so that the speakers can and the panelists can have their discussion. Finally, if you have any problems, put it in the chat. Evelyn Parker is our stakeholder manager from the Good Governance Academy. Evelyn is around for you to be able to help you with whatever your issues are. And with that, I'd like to first of all just say a little bit about the Good Governance Academy. If you go to the top, you can see about us, about our events. We do offer endorsed training programs. So we don't do our own training programs. You're welcome to approach us and we can find the right facilitators for you. But we do endorse training programs, and those come with a seal of endorsement as well as certificates of completion for those who are following the endorsed courses. We run a research program, which also includes discussion forums where people can join discussions that are held over multiple webinars. In fact, Prof. Cesar is here, and Prof. Cesar is one of our steering committee members. We also have recommended books, and we have a bookshelf where you can go and have a look at the books that we recommend. Really what we're doing is the new books that come out. And if you have a book coming out, please let us know. We'd love to host you in a webinar so that people can meet the authors. That's just a little bit about the Good Governance Academy. I'm going to now introduce to you Tom and Tom Davenport, who's our keynote speaker for today's event. The emojis are open, your reactions. So please, if you don't see them, click on the more button, see your reactions. If you liking what you're hearing, clap. If you laugh, if it's hilarious, please laugh. So please give us some reactions so we know how you're feeling about the topics. So with no further ado, yes, thank you. You can all practice. I'd like to introduce you to Tom Davenport. Tom is a world-renowned thought leader and author. He is the President's Distinguished Professor of Information Technology and Management at Babson College. He is a fellow of the MIT Center for Digital Business and an independent senior advisor at Deloitte Analytics. He is an author and co-author of 20 books and more than 200 articles. If you go to his website at the bottom, in fact, if you click on his image on the page, on the event page, you will get to his website, and you can have a look at all of the very interesting articles that he has there. He has been named a top 10 voice in tech on LinkedIn and one of the top 50 business school professors in the world by Fortune magazine. His presentation today is available on the website under his image. You can click on his presentation if you would like to download it. So with that introduction, Tom, really over to you. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Carolyn. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. It's a very diverse audience here, and I'm quite happy to be a part of it. As Carolyn said, I'll try to leave some time for questions at the end. And let me share my screen. I'm talking, I spend much of my time talking about enterprise use of artificial intelligence. And I know that the topic here is actually about a variety of different technologies, but I think the term was transformative technologies. And I think most of us would agree that artificial intelligence is the most transformative technology of our time. So I'm going to talk primarily about that. As Carolyn mentioned, my primary teaching affiliation is with Babson College, a business school in Massachusetts. And on the top here, you can see, if you don't have all the faces in the way, you can see our logo, which I decided was a little bit, I don't know, old-fashioned. So I asked an AI program that does images to create a new logo for us. And just so you realize that AI is not all-knowing and all-powerful, the logo on the bottom is the really horrible image that it came up with. So it does still make some big mistakes. It looks like some kind of robotic basketball or something. Anyway, I guess from an ethical standpoint, it was good though, because it said it doesn't recreate logos. However, unfortunately, we can rather easily escape these restrictions, and we can just say it's not a logo and show the top part of the image, and it tries to do something with it. I maybe if you can see behind me, I do have a recent book called All In on AI about organizations that aggressively embrace AI, and as I will say, also aggressively embrace AI ethics. So some of my comments will be related to this idea of what it means to be all in on AI. I'll talk about the different types and components of it because it's quite complex these days. Um, we're all interested in generative AI, so I'll talk about its impact on companies and industries, and because so many business schools are involved on education, and then ethics and what should we do about ethics in the current environment. AI, as I said, is quite complex. Most people um, don't understand it fully. I think there's a widespread belief that generative AI is really the only AI that matters, and it's not. AI has been going on. One presenter from a business school the other day talked about AI 1 year in, and I thought, well, a better term would be AI, 60 years in, because that's how long we've been thinking about what AI can do to us and how to make it more effective. The broad category on the left is this big purple box, and it includes AI based on logic, rules, and in many cases that those were called expert systems and are still around. I was talking with a company yesterday that still has rule engines. AI was often based on language and semantics, and that is fading a bit, but it's still around. And then AI is most frequently now based on statistics. So every one of these other boxes is a statistics-driven form of AI. So you have machine learning in general, these statistics-based predictive models. That happens to be roughly the same as something you may have heard of called predictive analytics. I remember I had written a couple of books on analytics, and I'd done some work in expert systems in my youth, but those had largely faded from the scene. Somebody told me at a conference, he said, predictive analytics and machine learning are basically the same thing. And I said, no, that can't be. But it's true. Machine learning often uses somewhat more complicated algorithms than predictive analytics, but basically it's the idea of predicting the values of data that you don't know from data that you do know, based on training of models. And descriptive analytics is the form you may be most familiar with, the dashboards, the bar charts, et cetera. Much simpler. And what I did for, I don't know, 20 years or so was to try to persuade people to move from the descriptive side to the predictive side and then into machine learning. Neural networks are a form of machine learning that have been around for quite a while as well. They were the source, for example, of fraud detection algorithms for banking starting in the late 1990s. And they have layers of variables. And then deep learning, which really came about around the turn of the century, has many, many layers of variables. Turns out very good at things like image recognition. And then generative AI, is a box within all those other boxes. It's a form of machine learning. It is a neural network. It is a deep learning neural network that creates language or images, or in many cases, both, based on previous language or images, but it's still making statistical predictions, and that's important to know. Just to show how important statistics have become, so I classified these AI methods and applications in terms of these three underlying tools: statistics, semantics, and logic, and then looked at all of these methods and applications to see which they're primarily based on. All the things in red are based on statistics. So that suggests that statistics is really the thing that's driving AI today. There's a little bit of semantics left, although it turns out semantics were much less effective at language than statistics, and a little bit of logic in the form of rules. But in general, I think people believe that machine learning provides more database predictions than rules, although rules do still have some value. We can interpret them for one thing. So what's the state of the enterprise AI world in mid-2024? Generative AI gave it a big boost in terms of the percentage of organizations doing something with AI. The latest estimate suggests about 85% are doing something, including generative AI, but very few are really fully committed, or what I call all in on AI. Most are still experimenting, and very few companies are all in on generative AI, other than vendors or startups. As I said, generative AI is only one type of AI, contrary to what a lot of people think. They think AI was invented in late November of 2022 when ChatGPT came to life, or was made available to the public. In general, organizations have had challenges getting AI into production. As I say, widespread experimentation, but production deployment means changing your organization, your business processes, upskilling your people, getting your infrastructure ready. So much, much harder and more expensive to do. I wrote my first book on the labor force implications of AI in 2016, the book called Only Humans Need Apply. And we have not yet seen large-scale automation from AI. Will we? Who knows? I think certainly if we ever get to this stage of artificial general intelligence where AI is better than us at everything, I think we would see large-scale layoffs, but thus far, very small, outside of robot-induced job loss in manufacturing. And that is still, reasonably small as well. In general, the low-hanging fruit projects are much more successful than the AI moonshot. Some of you may remember IBM Watson's claim that it was going to cure cancer or treat cancer. Didn't work out. Most other moonshots thus far have not reached the moon. And we have a slow movement toward democratization of these tools. My newest book, which I'm just finishing up now, it's not published yet. It's going to be called All Hands on Tech, which is really about the democratization of system development and automation and AI and data science, often called the citizen development movement. And this is happening, I think, fairly inexorably. In the data science area, it's probably an AI area, it's probably a bit slower just because of the technical requirements to understand how it all works. Um, my most recent published book is called All In on AI. It's about legacy companies, not digital native firms, but big old companies that have transformed themselves with AI. And what does that mean? It means lots and lots of use cases, sometimes thousands of them using multiple different AI technologies and formats. It's using AI to reimagine strategies and business processes and business models, not just tinkering around the edges with those things. Lots of employees fluent in how do you use AI, a lot of talent for building AI, of course. Data is, of course, the fuel of AI. In the old days, that was structured data, rows and columns of numbers generally. But now it is with generative AI, it's documents and knowledge, which kind of goes back. One of my previous enthusiasms was knowledge management, and that's coming back into play with generative AI. These companies have made long-term commitments with large investments. They all had some sort of framework, at least, for ethical and trustworthy AI. I think it's time to move beyond frameworks and policies, which I'll say closer to the end of my talk today. But they at least had that, and they had a governance structure with, as I said, a lot of talent. So they were making big bets on this technology. So some examples. I wish I could talk about Boeing in this regard, since I'm American, but no, Airbus is well ahead, seeing it as a source of competitive advantage, integrating all of the airlines that use Airbus aircraft, and now over 10,000 aircraft, with data integration using AI, and then a variety of AI-based services around, predicting when maintenance might be necessary, monitoring the health of the overall aircraft, tracking more effectively, better route planning, and so on. And their defense and space business quite aggressive as well. So one of the companies that has really embraced this technology. And then if I had to pick one single organization that was really most impressive in AI, I might pick the largest private sector company in China, Ping An, which has these ecosystems, if you will, kind of collections of organizations and relationships in 5 different domains: insurance, banking, healthcare, autos, and smart cities. Ping An started in the late 1980s with insurance, but now it's just this giant organization. And they use AI in all of these ecosystems, really making them work effectively. Just to give you one idea of what they do with AI, because I think it kind of points to one great advantage to us humans. They have telemedicine, an intelligent telemedicine app, a mobile phone app called Good Doctor, that does care management for over 400 million patients in China and Southeast Asia. And, there's a severe shortage of medical clinicians in China. So this is extremely helpful. It will do triage, tell you whether you need to go to the doctor or not. It will provide a preliminary diagnosis based on what you say your symptoms are in the app. It will provide a preliminary treatment strategy for the doctor if you are supposed to go there, and it will even arrange for the delivery of your medicines via a mobile delivery service. So just really quite astounding. And of course, I think many societies could use similar functionality. They, of course, have a huge network of people to make this happen. 24,000 software engineers, 800 data scientists, 180, I think over 200 now, AI specialists, and of course, investments in startups and private equity funds based on AI. So it just gives you an idea, if you're really committed, what that entails and some of the success that an organization can have with it. It's grown extremely rapidly. Um, so now for generative AI, I think we're all basically aware of the fact that it can produce art and entertainment content and business content, and certainly those of you in business schools know it can produce educational content. It's been, I think, quite troublesome for many academics, many people evaluating admissions applications. It will compose an admissions application fully in Latin if you would like, but that's probably a bad idea. We had early on at Babson, we had a couple of professors ask if AI could be shut off on the campus. I think the answer was no, and many of them have come around, and we're trying to figure out how we can be all in on AI as well. I'll say more about that in a little while. There are a variety of organizations that are embracing generative AI pretty dramatically. Coca-Cola for marketing. McDonald's, I was just reading this morning, they've struggled with their early efforts in drive-through kiosks, but I think that's partially because they were using the previous generation of natural language technology based on semantics and not statistics. I was just talking yesterday with Scotiabank that is just won both an innovative chatbot award and also an ethics award for AI in Canada. Toyota is embracing generative AI for product, new car design. Was a previous version of AI called generative design that really computes all of the parameters of a new design, what weights can it withstand and so on. I think we'll see that merge with generative AI. Morgan Stanley, I'll talk about in a second because they're doing a great job of managing knowledge, which I think many educational institutions will want to do. I recently wrote a piece about a couple of law firms that are heavily committed to this. One of them got merged while I was writing this piece. Is now called A&O Shearman and Wilson Sonsini, a Silicon Valley-based firm. Communications, including PR, very active. Sanofi, the French-based pharmaceutical firm, has declared we're all in on developing new drugs with AI, doing clinical trials with AI. I work a fair amount with Deloitte, which has really embraced this idea of IT code generation. I think it's transforming the profession of programming. And then I believe every analytics and data science tool will eventually have a generative AI front end. We'll just say what we want in terms of an analysis. So there, and many more as well. Industries and firms are starting to embrace this technology. So Morgan Stanley, I think, is an interesting example because it shows in a way what it takes to succeed. They had done some previous impressive work on using traditional AI, machine learning, to do next best action, investment-oriented recommendations. And this new generative AI capability, they're primarily using for knowledge management-related purposes. They wanted to give their financial advisors easy access to all of their internal knowledge. So they started working with OpenAI about a year and a half before ChatGPT was announced. And early adopters clearly have a big advantage here. There's something called RAG. You may or may not be familiar with it. It's called retrieval augmented generation. And it's basically putting your own knowledge into a generative AI system. So they took 100,000 of their most important documents with investment knowledge and knowledge of businesses and industries and process knowledge. How do you establish a new type of trust, for example? These documents have been carefully curated offshore by a group of 20 people in the Philippines, assigning 20 scores to each document for, how unique is it, how accurate is it, how well tagged is it, and that sort of thing. They tested it extensively, which is important to do. Now they've rolled it out to all 16,000 of their financial advisors. Only Morgan Stanley has access to it, so they never really had to worry about their proprietary knowledge leaking out into the broader system. With using controlled prompts and monitoring the outputs carefully, hallucinations don't seem to be a problem. So we can control that issue. Now they've done a second production application, although, as I'll say in a moment, those are rare, to summarize client conversations so that they can, remember them easily later on. So I think, one of my students at Babson, our focus is on entrepreneurship, and he said, why don't we just take all our entrepreneurship content and put it into generative AI so it'd be available to the world at large? And I thought at the time, well, that's kind of a nutty idea because then, we might find it hard to attract students. But we are thinking about some versions of that sort of thing. So there are a lot of industries that are going to be transformed by this technology, certainly marketing and advertising. Law firms, albeit slowly, they're somewhat change resistant. Software development, commercial art. I would not want to be in that profession now. Journalism, as if it didn't have enough strikes against it, is clearly going to be affected by this technology. Education, which many of you are involved in, and I think it'll be at all levels of education, video and audio entertainment, healthcare, which I mentioned earlier, I don't have on this list, I think is going to be transformed. So lots and lots of change in the works. There are risks of this. This was what Pandora looked like after she opened the box, created by generative AI, pretty scary. Hallucinations issue, these emergent behaviors that we never really anticipated, misinformation and deep fakes, the recency, lack of knowledge, unpredictable and unexplainable. It's almost as if aliens dropped a box on our planet one night and it had a slot in the front for inputs and a slot in the back for outputs, and we just don't really know exactly how it works. Some of the issues like hallucinations, sound, I think, scarier than they are. They're basically just bad predictions, since these systems are only predicting the next word based on the previous set of words. Sometimes it makes a bad prediction. And there are, of course, ethical risks related to potential bias and non-explainability of the outcome and some inappropriate language. That's been handled by some vendors, but not all of them. And of course, many unresolved legal issues. I told my children, unfortunately, they're too old to change to their career to being an intellectual property lawyer, because I think it's going to be a very successful profession. So we're really in the early stages. I did this survey for Amazon Web Services. It found that chief data and analytics officers around the world agree generative AI will transform their organizations. But what they're doing now is mostly experimenting, either at the individual or the organizational level. Most have not done much yet with their data, which is they agree is very critical for getting value out of generative AI. Only 37% agree they have the right data foundation. And note, only 6% have a production application. That was at the end of 2023. It may be a little bit better now, but that is taking a long time for many organizations. So if you think about this from an educational standpoint, I believe the people who use AI well will have greater productivity and idea generation and clarity of expression in their work. So it's presumably our obligation to teach them how to use it. But of course, we have to wrestle with this issue of how do students learn if AI does all the work. I teach AI. With AI, it's a struggle, I think, to get students to do the critical thinking that's necessary. On the positive side, there is definitely a leveling function. Many of our students do not speak English as their first language, and this can make their writing much, much better in terms of English expression. In technical education, this will enable everyone to be a programmer, a web developer, or data scientist. We're still wrestling with how to deal with that issue as well. Um, I think universities will eventually be one of the primary places where AI is used. There will be more content created, data will be analyzed automatically for researchers. We'll have automated content digestion and citation, which I think will speed productivity. Maybe that will institutionalize plagiarism. I hope not. But again, as with students, critical thinking and judgment will be at a premium. For administration, we can automate student-facing functions. We can personalize offers to students. One of my colleagues did a fantastic experiment with taking our course catalog, putting it into an AI system and saying, what courses should I take, just given my background and interests, and even make a schedule up for me based on these constraints that I have, and from the course catalog when the course is offered. It was amazing, much better than any advice I ever got from a human advisor. We already have the ability to predict using traditional AI who's likely to fail, who will give money, who will be successful faculty, and so on. So, maybe every school will have a chief AI officer before long. From an ethical perspective, of course, this is a photo of a burned up Tesla that was in an accident, supposedly a semi-autonomous vehicle. There are the bias issues. We've seen these stories. There haven't been a lot of them. I was a visiting professor at Oxford, and one of my colleagues there had looked for all of the really AI disaster stories in the media, and I think he found 103 up until a year ago or so. So, given all the systems going on, it's not a total disaster. There's the transparency issue where we don't know how these models work, and deep learning is virtually impenetrable. We can't make any sense of it. If it's a marketing application, fine, but if it's a healthcare application, I don't think patients are going to be satisfied by being told, the model says you're going to get cancer or you have cancer. I don't quite understand, the doctor would say, but trust the model. I'm not sure patients will do that. Openness about when AI is being used is critical. Language insensitivity, we have ways we can eliminate that, but it's not easy. And then AI-based product safety and effectiveness, which is, I think, the Elon Musk issue. I've had two Teslas, both of which were supposedly self-driving. I never trusted them, and I won't buy another one for that reason. There are AI-related ethical concerns, which are really more data concerns. Facebook has come up in sort of all of these areas, so misusing personal data, inadequate AI content moderation, even though Facebook at one point had 10,000 people doing content moderation, it still wasn't enough. AI algorithms leading to social division, and AI algorithms based on social preferences. Facebook groups only identifying people who are like them, or dating apps that only recommend people of your same race. These are still in evidence, unfortunately. So, I think the time is now to move from talking about ethics to action in ethics. And so evangelism is sort of the first step. Formal policies, maybe the second step. Even documenting each AI use case, which was pioneered by Google. Unfortunately, they fired the people who created this idea, where you have little cards describing each model and who created it and what some of the ethical issues might be. Reviewing every use case or application, I think, is the state of the art. now, and then automating that to some degree with an automated or semi-automated assessment. So Unilever, I think, is a great example of this. They've long been oriented to sustainable and ethical business practices. In other domains, they found a few early AI applications from some of their vendors that they thought were questionable ethically. So they established an AI assurance process. They worked with an external organization called Holistic AI based in London for external review. I know you're going to be talking about auditing these things. Now that we do have meaningful AI legislation in Europe, audit firms can get into this as well. But it's prior to that, they were not able to do it without legislation. These evaluations evaluate the efficacy of the AI system as well as the ethics. They evaluated over 50 use cases. This was a year ago. It's probably many more now with a red, yellow, green kind of analysis, and only a couple of reds, and they were able to figure out ways to change them back to yellows, which are kind of, wait and see. But they had one, this was quite strange. One of their cosmetics companies wanted to use an application to use facial recognition technology to determine whether their employees in department stores were actually wearing their own makeup. And A, that was not possible, and B, it was deemed not very ethical. So they stopped doing that. My last slide, what organizations and nations should do. I think we all have to think very big about what this can do to and for organizations, but we should start small, both with our legislation, our regulation, and with our AI use case programs. Go all in if your leaders are on board. I think it's the only way to have an economic impact. Gather and curate the needed data, hire the right talent, which is not easy to do. I think you should train many of them internally as well. Use AI to do something new, not just tinker with the current state. Fast following is problematic in this space because it just takes too much time to gather the data and hire the talent. Augmentation, I think, is far preferable to large-scale automation, and I think responsible organizations take that perspective from the beginning. How can smart humans and smart machines work alongside each other? Somebody should be in charge of designing work for how smart humans and smart machines work together. It's unclear that that's true in many organizations still. Policies, but processes are even more important for ethics. And I think, I have some minor quibbles with the AI Act in Europe, but in the United States, you have states talking about their own AI legislation. It's really crazy. I think much of the world should get behind Europe and say, let's think about a common set of standards that everyone can use to regulate this technology. Having it state by state, even country by country, is not going to work very well. With that, I will stop. I don't know, Carolyn, do I have a minute or two for questions?
Yes, you do. Thank you, Tom. I'm going to put us back on a gallery view. Thank you very much for the brilliant oversight, and it really does position all of the panel discussions where we can delve into the details of this. We have a couple of questions. Yes, thank you. Please, if you appreciated Tom's overview and presentation, please show your reactions. Let Tom know that you appreciated his presentation. You can find Tom's presentation on the event page, and the event page will be updated with the video of Tom's presentation. At that point,